Hey, welcome to Zen Healthcare IT, and thanks for checking out our video series on National Trusted Exchange Networks. This video series will be hosted by Zen's president and co-founder, Marilee Benson. Marilee has over 25 years of experience in the health information technology sector, and Zen is thrilled to be able to have her share some of her knowledge with you. If you have any questions or want a copy of the presentation, click the link in the description below, or you can just head to our website at consultzen.com.
Hi, I'm Marilee, and welcome to Zen Healthcare IT's video series on National Trusted Exchange. Before we get started, let me quickly introduce you to Zen. You're most likely leading a provider organization, a health system, or a technology team through a complex maze of interoperability strategies. Our job here at Zen is to help you understand and maximize the return on your interoperability investments. Together, we'll put the right people, processes, and technologies in place to ensure that you have a successful and a sustainable health information exchange infrastructure. With the ONC's recent release of the final rule on information blocking this spring, and then the subsequent emergence of COVID-19, I'm sure you would agree that there's probably never been a more important time to develop or rethink your strategy on how to meet the ever-growing need for healthcare interoperability. The National Trusted Exchange Networks can play a very important role in powering health information exchange across the country, but are they the right solution for you? So the goal of this series is to provide you with an understanding of what exactly, first of all, National Trusted Exchange Networks are, what networks exist today, and how they compare. And hopefully that will help give you some insights as to whether it's something that you want to pursue. To kick things off, we're going to start with this first video, which is just an introduction overall. Then in the next 3 videos, we're going to dive deeply into each of the 3 most popular networks today: eHealth Exchange, Commonwell, and Carequality. And we'll wrap the series with a review of TUFKA. Exactly where is it today, and what kind of impact could it have moving forward? So let's get started with what exactly is National Trusted Exchange. I find that there's 4 common elements in National Trusted Exchange Networks. The first 3 are really important, and they're pretty much seen everywhere. First of all, there's a business and legal framework for sharing the data in that network. This establishes the rules of the road. This is critical for establishing trust, as you can imagine. Participants need to know that they can trust one another by having a legal document that defines everyone's responsibilities. Secondly, there's a published technical specification for sharing the data, commonly called a technical framework. And this establishes how we're going to drive down that road together, how that data is going to move around from point A to point B. Third, there is an onboarding or certification process, if not for a provider group specifically, at least for the vendor who's going to be enabling that on-ramp to the National Trusted Exchange Network. So this is kind of like getting your driver's license. And then finally, this last piece is really just about what is the most common use case. And that's, first of all, for purpose of use. The most common one today is treatment, although we are starting to see more purposes of use under HIPAA being supported. And the most common data that's being shared is in the format of a CCD or CCDA. This also is an area that's evolving rapidly. For example, in the Carequality network, they're in the process of rolling out a notifications use case. And this will likely involve data formats that will be outside the context of a CCD or CCDA, although the details of that are still being worked out. Let's take a look at how the various National Trusted Exchange Networks evolved over time. I put together this timeline view for you that hopefully will be helpful to kind of understand what's occurred over the last 10 years. It all started back in 2009 with the forming of eHealth Exchange. eHealth Exchange was formed when the big federal partners came together and said, hey, we need a way of sharing data with one another. So you have the VA, the DoD, the Social Security Administration, hammering out an agreement of how they would trust each other to exchange data. They also allowed large provider groups, health systems, and health information exchange to become participants in that organization. Shortly thereafter, you have the emergence of Direct Trust, which is the trusted exchange authority for direct secure messaging. It's the most widely used trusted exchange network for direct secure message still today. And then you have the emergence of Cerner and Epic getting involved in health information exchange, but primarily between their own customers. So you have Cerner forming the Commonwell Alliance, and you have Epic forming shortly thereafter the Carequality network. Now, it's not too surprising that those two big, very competitive vendors did not agree to share data with one another right away. However, the good news is they have now realized that that's very important. And so in 2018, you see Commonwell actually becoming a Carequality implementer. Now, there's some defined terms that we haven't talked about yet that we will talk about a little bit later in this introduction. But what you really need to understand is that Carequality has emerged as a hub that can kind of connect these different networks together. So for example, today, eHealth Exchange participants can opt into Carequality, and Commonwell participants can opt into Carequality, and now you can do cross-network sharing. Finally, in the last year or so, you've had the emergence of TUFKA. This is where the federal government has gotten involved to try to kind of help move National Trusted Exchange from these various networks into maybe a more common framework for information exchange moving forward. Today, the largest active National Trusted Exchange networks are eHealth Exchange, Carequality, and Commonwell. I provided this handy at-a-glance view so that you can easily compare them side by side. I like to look at them across three main dimensions: their participants, the cost models, and their technical frameworks. Let's take a closer look in terms of how they vary across participants. This is probably one of the most important factors in determining which of these networks is going to be right for you. For eHealth Exchange, it's almost exclusively large health systems, HIEs, and the federal partners. These are the folks that sign the data sharing agreement under eHealth Exchange and pay the eHealth Exchange fees. For Carequality and Commonwell, it's a very different story. This is where you'll see a lot of vendors being direct members of these two networks. Remember, we talked about the fact that Epic and Cerner were really the founding members of these two networks. But since their founding, a number of other vendors have joined up, either in one or the other or both of the networks. The other nice advantage you have as a vendor as you look at these two networks is that while you can certainly sign up to be directly a service provider under these networks, you can also work with another vendor who's already gone through the certification process. So for example, here at Zen, we're a Carequality implementer, and we do provide access for other vendors who want to get to these networks but want to take advantage of the work that we've already done to go through the certification process. So there's a lot of advantages of doing it that way. Now, from a cost perspective, whether you are a vendor organization or a provider organization is really important because the rules are different for different types of organizations. Let's start with eHealth Exchange. Of course, as we talked about before, health systems and large provider groups can in fact join eHealth Exchange directly, and therefore the fees relevant to eHealth Exchange would apply. And I've listed 4 here: onboarding fees, annual membership fees, which are tiered based on revenues, and a couple of other optional fees that might come into play. If, however, you want to go to Carequality or Commonwell, then we start to get into some of these differences. So let's talk about provider organizations first. A provider organization will join Carequality or Commonwell through a service provider vendor. And your fees are going to be based on those vendors' fees. If, however, you are a healthcare vendor who wants to onboard to one of those two networks on behalf of your customers, then the fees applicable to service partner vendors are applicable to you also. I realize this cost model area is fairly complex, so I do encourage you to watch one of our deep dive videos, or all 3 if you're interested in all of them, so that I can give me a chance to explain the cost in a little bit more detail. Let's take a look at the technical framework for each one of these 3 networks. The good news is they're all very similar. All of them rely on IHE-based exchange. More specifically, we use the XCA set of standards for query-based exchange. From a real-world use case perspective, what we mean is, for example, let's think I'm a provider, I'm sitting at my EHR system, I search for a patient in the network, and if a patient match is found, then I'm going to return the documents that are available. The end user is at that point going to select which document they want or documents, and then those get returned. And those can then typically be consumed in some way by the receiving system. In terms of the types of documents, universally, you're going to see the support for CCDAs. But there are other documents that may be exchanged. We often refer to these as stable documents. So for example, something like a PDF. We're certainly seeing more PDF type document exchange, but it isn't universal, so just be aware of that. In terms of the differences between the network, the biggest one is going to be around this whole area of searching for the patient. Commonwell offers an RLS service directly in their core offering. RLS means we're going to enhance the ability to find the patient, because you can kind of think of it as being a big EMPI that's going to help match up the patient, even though the demographics may vary a little bit between systems. And you can see that would be a really helpful feature. Under Carequality, an RLS service is available through SureScripts. And in eHealth Exchange, I don't believe this is part of the service under eHealth Exchange today. However, things are changing very rapidly, so by the time I recorded this, that may have already changed. There's a lot of technical work groups happening, looking at solving problems like finding patients across the networks, and even looking at implementing new use cases such as notification and new technical specifications. So a lot happening, so probably a good idea to keep a close watch as things evolve. Now, moving on from the big three, let's talk about this most recent newcomer to the National Trusted Exchange Network group, and that is TUFKA. TUFKA arose from the 21st Century CARES Act. Congress called on the ONC to convene stakeholders to develop a trusted exchange framework and create a common agreement for exchange between networks, which obviously is pretty important right now because we've had all these different initiatives, but really nothing that from a federal government perspective is kind of setting the stage long-term for national information exchange. So there's a couple key things at a high level to understand about TUFKA. First, there's no current mandated requirement to participate with TUFKA, although with the information blocking rule, I think you can probably see where we're headed. Secondly, the TUFKA framework is still being developed. The ONC awarded the Sequoia project the designation of Recognized Coordinating Entity, or RCE, because we needed a new acronym in healthcare. And so they're the designated entity doing the convening to come up with this framework. Because the Sequoia project was the incubator for the other National Trusted Exchange networks, specifically eHealth Exchange and Carequality, you can expect the early TUFKA use cases and technical framework, I think, to look a lot like Carequality and eHealth Exchange, which is basically query-based CCDA and CCD exchange. And I think that's a good thing because we can implement the lessons learned for all of the work that's happened over the last 10 years. Thank you for joining us for this introduction to National Trusted Exchange. If you'd like a copy of this presentation, please visit our website at consultzen.com. We encourage your comments or suggestions for new content, so just use that little comment box below this video. Finally, please keep a watch for new videos coming in this series. I know there's a lot of details, a lot to learn, and we look forward to sharing that with you. Have a great day.
Before we go, we just want to let you know that Zen now offers free 15-minute consultations with our engineers, so click the link in the description below to get yours scheduled today. Thanks for watching.